Hello and welcome to another DP UK podcast. My name's Josie Clarkson and I'm the Communications Officer here, and today I'll be speaking with Feyi, who is the owner of the Black Dementia Company. Feyi, would you just like to give us a bit of background about yourself?
Thanks, Josie. So my name is Feyi Raimi-Abraham and I'm the founder and CEO of the Black Dementia Company, which was incorporated in August this year. My background is law, and for many years I supported people who were employed in the entertainment industry, so supporting them with their employment law needs and rights. I'm also involved in the arts, so I've done certain creative projects, just curating art exhibitions and music events and things like that. And I also do some work for a UK-based charity. So I've got all those things, all those different jobs. And I'm also the full-time carer of my mother who has dementia. That's me in a nutshell. I'm half Nigerian, half Trinidadian, and I live in the UK.
Could you just describe for us what the Black Dementia Company that you founded is?
It's a company that, I describe it as a service. It's there to serve persons living with dementia and their families, friends, contacts, clients, whatever, professionals that are helping them from the Black community, people who are familiar with African and Caribbean backgrounds, bearing in mind that especially in the 21st century world, we have persons from African and Caribbean backgrounds of different races. So it's about cultural familiarity. And so the Black Dementia Company it's an entity that is there to support in whatever way. So yes, we have products and we're developing products, especially because there isn't anything out there. You go to any of the other dementia related shops or retail platforms, and everything, I can say with confidence, everything at the moment is focused on persons who are more familiar with a British upbringing or British culture. So the Black Dementia Company is supporting in all aspects. So yes, we have products, but then we've also launched a consultancy service, and that is as wide as the need requires. So training, talks, an organization has contacted us to train their carers, just trying to explore and discuss and find out more. The focus, as I keep saying, is on dementia, but obviously helping to fill that gap where there is a gap to support persons who are familiar with African and Caribbean backgrounds.
So just really a massive resource for all things to do with dementia and different cultures.
Exactly.
Getting straight into it, we're here to talk today about the differing experiences of Black people with dementia in the UK. How do you think the experiences of dementia differ between ethnicities in the UK?
I think the different experiences relate to culture, perceptions of the need for care, perceptions of vulnerability, perceptions of what seems to be normal in different communities. And I think obviously that would have an impact on how people approach a condition like dementia. So what I think personally is that people's ways of life generally, if it's a get up, get go type of community, then where there's something that seems to be holding a person back, that can affect how or influence how they view that thing, that condition that holds a person back in whatever way. So you could find that maybe some people think, gosh, they used to be, this is somebody that used to do this and that so quickly, or they were so independent. Why are they doing this? Oh gosh, let's just leave them behind, or let's just keep them at home because, it's holding us back. Or there could be embarrassment, there could be bewilderment. There's no clear-cut answer to that. It's just worth bearing in mind that there are other layers that, to culture that obviously will affect how people approach dementia.
I think that's a great answer, and it feeds back into the saying that if you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia, and each person's relationship with their culture is going to be completely different. It's worth remembering that there are these differences and treating people in accordance with that cultural identity. You mentioned about the differing attitudes towards dementia, and you mentioned about the get up and go attitude. What other differences in attitudes do you think are present, particularly in the Black community, towards dementia?
There's a general feeling. So, I've had to sort of give a bit more thought to these things that where, if we're having a general conversation, it might seem insignificant. You might think, oh, of course, if somebody is used to being busy and all of a sudden something is holding them back from doing that, then they will have a reaction one way or the other. And the reaction could be positive or could be negative. So it could be that they now take that time to support the person who's slower or who's a bit more confused or whatever. Or it could be that they feel embarrassed because, again, culturally, everyone is trying to achieve, and, you're hearing, your neighbor, your cousin, or your friend, or somebody from your town now has a PhD or has this big job. And there you are now, you can't do much more because you've got this person now you're caring for.
And interesting there that you said that it's not necessarily always a bad thing. Like you say, when people are so driven, sometimes they neglect themselves a little bit. And so being forced to take that time to actually slow down a bit isn't always a bad thing. It feels like you're talking a lot about the carers of people with dementia, because that's obviously your expertise. How about people with dementia, like your mother? How would she find it?
If a person with dementia had a greater sense of awareness, or maybe at the early stages of the condition, then I would think that there would be that element of embarrassment, again, maybe due to lack of understanding of the condition, fear, all these things that you find in other communities. But I think particularly in the Black community, there is, people talk about the fact that people are not forthcoming as, they don't appear to be as forthcoming as with other communities. And there is that embarrassment, but a lot of the time, I think it's more from misunderstanding. Dementia awareness is still growing. People don't understand the condition, either here in the UK or back on the continent of Africa or, in the Caribbean. And so awareness is the key to everything, really, I think. About 2 weeks ago, I was on Twitter and I just did a hashtag dementia Nigeria, for example. Now, because the Nigerian president is in his 70s, and when he speaks, he's very measured. And, there are all these tweets dating back to, 2018, 2017, and people saying, oh, Buhari's slow, hashtag dementia, silly man, really being very, very derogatory and saying my focus is more dementia, not so much about the political aspect of things, but about the fact that anything bad, anything, he's forgetting or he's slow or he's not doing, the economy is bad or whatever, dementia. He needs to go and sort his dementia out and things like that. And, and that shows a lack of awareness, isn't it, of the condition.
Yeah, almost using it as an adjective rather than an actual diagnostic. So how do we go about addressing this? Obviously, an increase in awareness is required. How do we overcome that?
You cannot overemphasize this whole awareness. I know it's almost cliche, but it's true. Now, part of that comes with people with lived experience speaking out more and encouraging people to speak out more and inviting and including more people from the backgrounds, especially we're talking, okay, in terms of the UK in particular, just sort of reaching out more. And it's the message. It's not that this is negative or anything. This is something, where I've had to correct people when they say, oh, somebody's suffering from dementia. And it's not that, they're living with dementia and helping people to understand that people can still have their lives, even, in spite of the condition. As with every other condition, yes, people at some point would need more support than others, but it's more about demystifying and almost decriminalizing dementia. In the 70s, I remember some adults around me speaking about cancer in hushed tones. There was a time when cancer was whispered. And thankfully, through awareness, sadly, as more and more people became personally touched by cancer, it flipped from hiding it or being a stigma to actually trying to support cancer research and cancer, care and everything else. And I think dementia, for me personally, I think dementia is in that space at the moment as cancer was 40 years or so ago. So, yeah, so it's more about talking more openly about dementia. Some people, I have to say, I've not heard from for a while since they've found out that, my mother has dementia, but maybe they're embarrassed. They don't know how to relate. They don't know whether to say sorry or, we commiserate with you. You just have to keep speaking about it. And I'm trying to encourage those in my circle of contacts from African, especially from African and Caribbean backgrounds, to be more open about talking about it because, it's probably too late, most likely too late for our loved ones who have the condition now. But what about us? What about the next generation? What about future generations? There has to be a cure or some sort of preventative solution to dementia.
Yeah, I think the key thing, like you say, is if you're open about it, then you foster that environment where whoever you're talking to about it feels that they can be open, because it's understandable that some people shy away for fear of not wanting to make a situation worse. But if you're leading with that openness and encouraging other people to engage with it, in an open way, then that's how you kind of start to create that change. And like you say, it may be too late for people like your mother in terms of a cure, but it's never too late in terms of support and improving quality of life, because the more people are understanding and supportive, the better someone's experience with dementia will be. So there are a lot of support services available for people in the UK from charities and government organisations. But do you think there are any barriers for Black people in the UK to access these kind of services?
Yes, sadly. The organizations and the charities and everything else that currently exist in the UK, they're doing amazing work. So I have to say that first of all. But there is that gap, there is that disconnect still. And this is what prompted me to start my company. I didn't start this year or go into lockdown thinking, yeah, in spite of everything else I'm going to do this. But I, found that there was this genuine gap, not just in products, but just just widely. And then what I also found was that even research papers, my observation is they just seem to be repeating the same almost stereotypical lines when it comes to dementia and people from Africa or the Caribbean or African and Caribbean backgrounds. And okay, some might say, yeah, maybe that's because the research outputs are valid. But, some things are outdated. Like, for example, talking about witchcraft. Yes, some communities in Africa at some point did view, and there might still be examples of those happening now in 2020, but where there had been a misunderstanding of dementia, some people had looked at older people acting strangely, in their view, as maybe possessed by evil spirits or maybe witchcraft or whatever. But to be fair to many countries in Africa, the discussion has moved on from that. There's still a misunderstanding or lack of understanding about dementia in a community level, on a community level, but they're not talking so much about spirits and witchcraft. When those type of stereotypes sort of translate into what's happening in the UK, the focus is missed. So there are gaps. There are the idea the Black community tend to prefer to look after themselves. People younger relatives look after their older relatives. And so maybe they're fine, or maybe they don't want us to interfere. Well, there is some truth in the fact that there is that tendency to want to look after your relatives, or sometimes not reaching out because they think that's what the community prefers, or their tendency is to look after their own, then we might be intruding. There are ways of making services more approachable. And I found that once my company became, people became aware of the company, People send me messages from different organizations saying we really didn't know how. We didn't know how. We were aware that we didn't have products for Black people or whatever, or specifically for Black people, but we didn't know how. And so again, others might want to have a conversation about that. But for me, the focus is on the dementia, and that's why I'm happy to just talk and share and see how. Because okay, now we know that there is this gap. In 2 years' time or so to come, there's no excuse. If by 2023, 24, people are to say we didn't know how, then that's where we can then say, actually, no. But up to this point, if a person says or an organization says we didn't know how to reach out to them, well, let's start to find ways to reach out. So the simple answer to your question is that I think there is still a lot more to be done in the UK in terms of servicing Black people or people from Black communities living or experiencing dementia.
So would your advice be for these companies that maybe do want to improve their accessibility to just reach out and what would you say to people who are maybe nervous about getting it wrong?
I would say exactly what you've just said and exactly what you did, Josie. Exactly. Reach out and be open to the fact that, I'm here to learn, or, I'd like to learn with this common goal, which is to do more research in order to improve the situation or whatever it is. But reach out, but don't just sit back and assume that if I do reach out, I'll be offending or what, because that's not the case. Again, remember, while I've said, I'm not a dementia specialist. I'm not the spokesperson for the whole Black community. So everybody is different. And yes, people might have, not necessarily only from the Black community, from other communities, people might feel defensive, people might feel offended or whatever. We can't change how people react to certain things. But my message is there are people, well, there's me anyway, and I'm sure there are others like me who will not be offended if people reached out and said, look, we don't understand this, help us with this. And that's why I'm really conscious that the Black Dementia Company isn't just seen as an e-commerce company, because it's not.
And another thing you started to touch on was about the research, and you've been looking at research papers and everything seems a bit outdated. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'm not sure, but there are possibilities. It could be researcher fatigue, if there's such a thing, weariness. Maybe, yes, even from the looking at things from the other side of the table, maybe there are people who have been keen to conduct research but have not been getting the input from the Black community, and maybe there's that feeling of, gosh, okay, it's not that we don't care, but we're just not getting it, so let's do other things that we have access to. But then also there's that, which I acknowledge, that could be one of the reasons. But there could also be the reason of, to be put it bluntly, don't care, really. And then in between everything else that we're going through at the moment, with the wider world, who knows really? But I think certainly now, with having these discussions from the potential research pool, i.e. me and others like me, I think we really need to start to engage and show that, look, we are interested in participating to just see how we can help improve the quality of outputs.
I think it's a two-way thing. You need to be given the opportunity to take part, but when you are offered, there needs to be that engagement two ways. So obviously, being more open is something we've touched on. What do you think that researchers or the wider public could do in order to encourage more people with African and Caribbean heritage to take part in dementia research?
I think they have to be more clear about their intentions. It's about giving the narrative and not just saying, we're doing this research, we need people to come forward and tell us your story. Give the narrative, say why. As people, Black people generally, by virtue of our heritage, so whether we're Black people from Africa or Black people from the Caribbean and the space in between, we're storytellers by nature. And obviously, it's not everybody, but even the people who are used to giving curt and short and brief answers or responses to things are used to hearing stories. That is an innate thing in us. And then, as on a wider scale, as human beings of whatever race, we tend to approach things better if we're clearer about things. It's the same with any other aspect of research. So, what I'm trying to say here, Josie, is explain to people why it's important for their input. So don't assume that people will know that, oh, yeah, we want our research to be more reflective of the society or whatever. No, it's not just that. It's about this is what dementia is, as far as we know. This is what the pointers are, not just the medical, cardiovascular, maybe what you eat or genetics, but it's more about things like even the reminiscing, memories, heritage. All those things are important to people living with dementia and their support network. And the more we understand things like that, the more we can input into our research, the more the research output is richer. For other reasons, people have become wary. I know, especially, Black people have become very wary of people say, oh, we just want to find out this, we just want to find, and then you find that, oh, we were just used to help certain people to say, right, we've ticked the box of inclusion, we've done an advert and we put our one, Black person in there, things like that. So it's more about making that approach richer. I think it would be better, again, because of that narrative nature, that cultural sense of narration that runs through our veins. A richer approach will be better received.
And also acknowledging maybe how people have got it wrong in the past, to say, we know that's happened and we understand your concerns, but this is different. This is more of a dialogue rather than a one way. You give us all your information and we use it and then you never hear from us again.
Exactly. It's a joint project. We're in this together. We're partners with this cause, in terms of really trying to understand what's going on.
How and where do you think that researchers could go to access these kind of more diverse participants?
You can't go wrong by approaching community groups. It sounds very basic, but the elder community. There are lots of West Indian Association, elders groups, Caribbean Association, different African, Nigerian, Kenyan, or whatever, or village groups or whatever. There are these elders groups anyway. These groups are made up of not just individuals, but then their carers, their relatives. So reaching out and just starting with that conversation, I think that would be a good way to start. I think also in terms of just commentaries or put things out there that reflect the intention that is coming from. So it's almost like preparing the ground. So even if researchers haven't reached the point where they've got tangible subjects or things to start their research, you can start, thinking out loud on paper and saying, yes, we have gotten it wrong in the past, or we may have missed something in the past, but it's now time to be more inclusive or open or whatever. So start these commentaries, and not just obviously in research papers, but in community papers. I think that would be a good start, so to create that awareness, so that when these organizations or groups are contacted, there's something to start that conversation. That's the way, I think.
I think that's a really nice note to end on. I'm feeling positive for the future after that. And thank you so much for speaking to us about such an important fact of life that we're experiencing right now. And yeah, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and your insight into this situation.
Thank you for reaching out in the first place as well. Thank you so much, Josie.